Yeah, no problem. Do you want me to get started then?
Yes, that would be lovely.
Yeah. All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our Responsible Whale Watching webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Now, the reason why we've invited everyone to the webinar today is because in recent years we've seen an increase in both activity on the water and the number of humpback whale sightings along the southwest coastline. These incredible animals offer a rare and exciting opportunity for people to experience wildlife close to home. With that opportunity comes responsibility. And our aim today is to share the knowledge and guidance needed to observe humpback whales in a way that is safe, respectful, and minimize disturbance. By understanding how our actions can affect whales and all marine and coastal wildlife, we can ensure these encounters remain positive for everyone. Bex, could you share my next slide, please? Brilliant. So just a quick agenda for the webinar. So I'm going to start off. I am the chair of the Cornwall Marine Coastal Co-Group, which I will run through with you guys on explaining who we are and a little bit about what wildlife disturbance is. And I am also the conservation officer at the Cornish Seal Sanctuary, so that might be why you may have seen me around a little bit. We'll also follow with Sayer, who's going to talk about the marine wildlife best practice and cover a large variety of wildlife. Then we're going to move on with Trudy Russell, who's come to us from the Natural England, who is a marine mammal senior specialist. And she's going to be talking about the cetacean policy and best practice. And then we've got Dan Jarvis following up with the humpback whales of Southwest England. And Dan Jarvis is, he works for British Divers Marine Life Rescue. He's the Director of Welfare and Conservation and is also the Area Coordinator for Cornwall. And just to go back, I forgot to introduce you properly to Sue Sayer. Sue Sayer is the Chair of the Seal Research Trust, but a lot of you, I assume, is already met Sue. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, I just basically want to run through who we are as the Cornwall Marine Coastal Co-Group. So the Cornwall Marine Coastal Co-Group is a partnership of organisations and individuals who all care about Cornwall's marine and coastal wildlife. We bring together a wide range of people, including conservation organisations, scientists, regulators, and importantly, those who work on, in, or near the water. Our shared aim is to support responsible enjoyment of the marine environment. This means helping people experience Cornwall's incredible wildlife in a way that is respectful, sustainable, and based on best practice. So both wildlife and the marine activities around it can thrive side by side. Next slide, please. So just to quickly run through what is disturbance, because not many people really understand on what we mean by disturbance. So disturbance is when an animal changes its natural behaviour. This can affect feeding, resting, socialising, and travel. Repeated disturbance can affect or can impact the health and survival of that individual. Disturbance doesn't always look dramatic. It can be something as simple as an animal changing direction, diving earlier than normal, or stopping what it was doing. While a single disturbance incident might seem small, repeated disturbance over time can affect an animal's energy levels, ability to feed, and overall well-being. So even if an animal doesn't look stressed, small changes in behaviour can have a long-term effect. Next slide, please. Apologies, I've got a tickly throat. So why does this matter? Cornwall is a special place for marine wildlife with a wide range of species using our waters to feed, rest, and travel through. This richness is one of the reasons wildlife watching here has become so popular for both visitors and the locals. As interest in whale, dolphin, and seal watching grows, so does the amount of activity on and near the water. While this brings many benefits, it also means there is a greater chance for disturbance if we are not careful in our activities. This is why responsible behaviour is so important in Cornwall. By understanding our impact and following best practice, we can make sure wildlife watching remains a positive experience for both people while still protecting the animals that make these experiences possible. Next slide, please, Bex. So research shows that the codes of conduct provide clear, practical guidance on how to behave around wildlife. They are based on scientific research and real-world experience and are designed to be realistic and achievable. Importantly, though, they are not about stopping people from enjoying going outdoors and enjoying observing wildlife. They exist to protect animals while supporting high-quality, responsible wildlife experiences and watching. Next slide, please. So the Cornwall Marine Coastal Co-Group is a partnership group. We recognise that protecting wildlife works best when everyone is involved. Rather than telling people what to do, we focus on working together to find practical solutions that work on and around the water. By sharing knowledge and experience, we can support both wildlife protection and thriving with responsible marine tourism sector here in Cornwall. Next slide, please. So the codes of conduct provide clear, practical guidance on how to behave around wildlife. They are based on scientific research and real-world experience and are designed to be realistic and achievable. Importantly, they aren't there to basically to stop people from watching wildlife. So by supporting high quality and responsible wildlife experiences, we can make this experience better for everybody. Next slide, please. So ecotourism inspires a deeper connection with nature while supporting education, raising awareness about conservation. By encouraging responsible travel, it provides economic benefits for local communities and fosters sustainable livelihoods. Excuse me. Visitors also experience improved moods and overall well-being, while their participation in eco-friendly activities helps promote and fund the protection of natural habitats and the habitats for future generations to come. Next slide, please. Now, with responsible wildlife watching, there are benefits for everybody involved. Animals experience less disturbance, which supports their long-term health, and people often have better, more meaningful encounters when animals behave naturally. It also helps build public understanding and respect for wildlife, which is then supporting sustainable tourism and Cornwall's reputation as a responsible destination. Next slide then, please. Now, boat operators play a vital role in responsible wildlife watching. For many people, a trip on a boat for the first time or their only close-up encounter with marine wildlife, operators are perfectly placed to share knowledge, set expectations, and explain why certain behaviours that they're viewing are so important. By demonstrating responsible practice on the water, operators help in turn wildlife encounters to be a powerful learning experience for their passengers. Next slide, please. So Cornwall has a real opportunity to be seen as a leader in ethical wildlife tourism. Education is a key part in this. When people understand why guidelines exist and how their behaviour makes a difference, they are more likely to act responsibly in their own time in the future. A single positive experience can then inspire long-term care and support marine conservation in the future. Next slide, please. So the Cornwall Marine Coastal Code Group does provide a wide range of resources to support responsible behaviour, from guidance documents to outreach and engagement. By sharing clear and consistent messages, we help ensure that both the businesses and the public understand why responsible wildlife watching, what it looks like and why it is so important, and then providing consistency to help build trust and reinforcement for good practice all across the Southwest. Next slide. Thank you. Apologies, I did run through that quite quickly, but I was really cautious on time. Again, Bex said that she was recording this presentation, so if there's anything that you missed, that will be available. Thank you.
You're on mute, Bex.
It's always one. Okay, well, thank you very much, Grace. It's a brilliant introduction. So we'll just pass on now to our second speaker, which is Sue Sayer from the Seal Research Trust, who'll be talking about general wildlife best practice and the Marine Codes of Conduct.
So I feel like me and Grace are building up to the most exciting speakers, aren't we, Grace? Right, hopefully you will just be able to see my slide now. So I've been given the role of talking to you about best practice codes. And the first one I'm going to go through is the DEFRA Marine and Coastal Wildlife Code, then the Wildlife Safe Scheme, just a little bit about that, the CAA Civil Aviation Authority drone codes, because obviously that's relevant to humpbacks, and a little bit about other advice to do with drones. So the Cornwall Marine, the DEFRA Marine and Coastal Wildlife Code is not the most exciting document, but it is probably the most important document that you could look at before going out to see any coastal wildlife. It gives you, and I'm not going to go through all of this in detail because we'll be here until tomorrow, but for example, there is a section on how you can be aware that you could disturb wildlife, the things that you can do: approaching, moving, touching, crowding, circling, separating, chasing, feeding, noise, being noisy, and damaging and changing habitats, for example. And then it also describes, if animals are repeatedly disturbed, the impacts of that. So you know what chronic stress does to you as a body, a human body. It's the same for marine wildlife. It causes stress. And also disturbance can lead to injury. Chronic stress is not good for any of us, and it's the same for marine mammals. They can be displaced from their favoured habitats. They can be disrupted in terms of their behaviour. For example, drones. I've only recently discovered this myself, the sound, but it's common sense. Sound from drones goes into the water column so that a cetacean that's echolocating in front of it could have its feeding disrupted because of the sound of the drone in the water in front of it. You need to know when wildlife is most vulnerable. So that's obviously when it's going to be breeding, or for example, with seals, molting. There's information about the different breeding seasons and when you need to be particularly conscious of that. There's a section specifically about dolphins, whales and porpoises reacting to disturbance and the sorts of things they might do as a result. But as Grace said, and I would reiterate this, disturbance is not always obvious. So disturbance is often invisible. You can't see the reaction at all because the response was metabolic. Raised heart rates, raised breathing rates, all that kind of stuff. You can't see the physical changes inside the body as a result. So you can't just always assume that it's not disturbing them. And then, of course, the impacts of disturbance can be delayed as well. So as Grace said, we want everyone to act responsibly around wildlife. DEFRA say try to stay at least 100 metres away, land, sea and air. Things that you should definitely not do. Dolphin, whale or porpoise, do not pursue them at all or come close to them. And then there's some extra whale and dolphin conservation advice on this. I'll put the link to this in a minute in the chat. But effectively, if a dolphin comes to you, to bow ride a boat, for example, then that is not disturbance. But if they choose to leave and you change your course and direction to follow them, that is disturbance, and that is illegal. There's a bit of information, very brief, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute, about the CAA's advice for using drones, and then there's more of it, look. But it also recommends that you look at the Wildlife Safe Scheme, which is the scheme I'm going to tell you about next. So, next but one. The drone advice from the CAA is a very thorough document. If you've got a drone, I'm sure you've looked at it. But the key elements in the whole of that code are: do not fly where you will disturb or endanger animals or wildlife. So you shouldn't be using a drone within 100 meters of wildlife. Flying may be restricted at some sites, sites of special scientific interest, where the flight may disturb animals or wildlife. So you need to know where these SSSIs are, and you need to know what their features are. So, for example, in Cornwall, we have 3 SSSIs where seals are monitored features. This means it's illegal to disturb seals in these 3 areas from land, sea, or air. Then there's the WISE code, as I mentioned a moment ago. It's the national certificated scheme that shows that you have had some really good quality professional training in how to responsibly watch wildlife on the coast, but also in the water, but also from the air. And it's tells you about all different types of wildlife that you might encounter around the coast. So it's a real must. It's obviously good for operators, good for adventure providers, any activity people around the coast, but also members of the public will be interested in that. Obviously, this graphic includes a drone, so I'm going to move on to say a little bit more about drones. Basically, this is the impact of a drone on seals. The drone shocked me, and I nearly fell off my seating point on the cliff edge, which is not a great thing to happen. I'm just going to play it again. So I didn't catch the start of the drone, but hopefully you can see the seals have legged it into the water, and they're looking a bit nonplussed. They don't know where to look because they can't really identify where the sound is. That's a really obvious impact of disturbance, but of course it's much harder to spot impacts on cetaceans. So we did some work with Natural England, Trudy, which was fantastic. We were very proud to do it, and came up with some drone best practice advice for seals, not for humpbacks, but for seals. And we tried 100 meters, and quite a lot of disturbance did occur. So we tried 110 meters, admittedly with this humongous, massive drone. And ultimately, our advice is summarized as minimum 110 meters flight height if you've got a big drone like this, the shortest flight possible with the shortest flight path, and not doing it on still quiet days when there are low ambient sound levels. That's our advice for seals. The document is there if you want more detail. And we've also negotiated with the Ministry of Defence no-fly zones across all the sensitive seal sites in Cornwall for MOD craft, but we're in the process of trying to make sure that it goes onto the NATS, the National Aviation Traffic System, as well for recreational flights. Just wanted to say a tiny bit about birds. So this is a fantastic wildlife site in Cornwall. It is one of the guillemot ledges on one of the offshore islands. What I didn't know until about 10 years ago was that guillemots keep their eggs on their feet to keep them warm. However, if you suddenly spook a guillemot, it will fly off and take its egg with it. Now, if you spooked all of these, because one tends to spook another, domino effect. If you did that unexpectedly on this bird ledge, they could potentially all turn around, all fly off, and all smash their eggs on the ledges below. And that's a whole year's worth of energy and productivity lost in a single disturbance incident. What they would normally do if they get warning that you're coming is they will drop the egg off their feet onto the ledge and then fly off. But if you suddenly spook them, they don't have time to do that. In summary, and I'm going to leave this to the cetacean experts, which I am not, it is illegal to disturb whales, dolphins and porpoises everywhere. So with the seals at the moment, it is just those 3 SSSIs in Cornwall, but for whales, dolphins and porpoises, it's illegal everywhere. So, top tips for drones around wildlife. Do not stress or disturb wildlife as this wastes energy. Seals haul out sites. Wait a minute, apologies. Do not stress or disturb wildlife as this wastes energy. Avoid seal haul out sites to avoid injury. Avoid nesting ledges to protect birds and their chicks. Avoid feeding cetaceans or seals. I don't know why that doesn't say seals as well. Know the restrictions, for example, triple SIs, and comply with any local signage that is present. For example, you will always need landowner permission before you take off. I don't know why that says hand. That's very strange. You need permission before you can take off a drone, and the National Trust do not allow this. So you need a license from the National Trust to take off on National Trust land. So that's my summary about other species, quick whistle stop tour, other species and codes, hopefully not too dry a form. I'll put the link in the chat for sure so that you can all follow best practice and know what the law is. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sue. Would you stop sharing?
Just done. Yeah.
Probably.
Sorry, I couldn't find the button.
Thank you very much for that. All right. Well, without further ado, I shall hand over to Natural England's Marine Mammal Senior Specialist, Trudy Russell, and share my screen so that you can see her presentation. Hold on.
Sorry, Bex, you're confusing me. I thought I was sharing.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you do it. That would be better.
Well, have you guys got that?
Yeah, so that's great.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for inviting me along. Yeah, so as Bex said, my name's Trudy Russell. I work for Natural England as a marine mammal senior specialist, but I happen to be really lucky. And actually, I live down in Cornwall despite working nationally for them. So I know quite a few of you guys, and will hopefully get out and see the humpbacks here this winter. You might notice all of my humpback photos that turn up here have got a background that suggests it wasn't Cornwall where I took them. So do forgive me for that. So, Natural England, who we are and what we do in terms of marine mammals as a sort of starting point. So we're a government advisor on the natural environment, covering everything from trees and butterflies out to the marine environment as well. We were set up by the Natural Environment Rural Communities Act from 2006. And our whole purpose is about looking after the natural environment, making sure that we're working to protect that. In terms of marine mammals, that's quite a smaller section of our work, but there's a little team of 4 of us who spend our whole time chatting about marine mammals. And what that looks like in the day job is mostly about offshore wind. In a busy time for offshore wind, I wouldn't be allowed out to make presentations, so this was good timing. But as well as that, I do quite a bit of work now on seals. Seals and drones is on my ongoing to-do list to make sure that everything Natural England does works with that as well. So in terms of protection legally for marine mammals, there's a couple of things that exist and that you guys should know about. And the first one I'm just going to talk about briefly is marine protected areas and marine mammals. So marine protected areas is actually a huge part of the day job in Natural England, although relatively small for cetaceans. We have a couple of types of protected areas that are important for marine mammals. Special areas of conservation is the first. These are the big SACs that were required by Europe, but are now part of our UK legislation. And we have them for 3 important species, the grey seal and the harbour seal. And Sue's chatted nicely to you about those. We also now have relatively recently 2 large protected areas SAC for harbour porpoise. So you can see the maps there. There's one that makes up quite a lot of the southern part of the North Sea. And more important for those of us down here, we've got the coast stretching from the north of Cornwall and up to Wales, which is a really important area for harbour porpoise, with about 5% of the population in the whole of the Celtic Sea in that area, particularly over the winter. So that's really important to know about. We've also got triple SIs, as Sue's mentioned, both for grey seal and harbour seal, and she's shown you the map of the local ones for those, so I don't need to show you that. But it's worth, in terms of protection for the species from that, is mostly around making sure their populations are healthy. And so we do quite a bit of work making sure that any proposed activities can't affect them if they're going on in those sites. As Sue mentioned earlier, for cetaceans, it's not just that site-based approach. For obvious reasons, they explore everywhere. So site-based approach isn't the best thing for them typically. This is guidance from the Marine Management Organisation, who take a lead on this particular area of work. But it shows you for all dolphins, porpoises and whales what the legislation is and what the offences are. So you can see in summary, you're not allowed to kill, capture, possess, keep, damage or disturb them, which is great. And I've popped on the long versions of those pieces of legislation for you, although I promise I won't test you on them later. And I've also included there the link if you want to go and if you're a legislation geek, you can go and have a bit more of a look at that. They've got some slightly different wording, which I'll take you through just so you know how it affects you in your activities. But the key thing is that actually it's all the same. If you look after the animals, then you'll be absolutely fine and there'll be no offences caused. Before that, though, I'm just going to introduce the term European Protected Species. Some of you might have heard of that before. This comes from the Habitats Directive, and it's a list of species that throughout the whole of Europe require extra protection and legal sort of being looked after. And that list, really great, really brilliantly, includes all of the dolphins, porpoises and whales. So any kind of cetacean is on that list and gets that extra protection. It's also worth noting that both sea turtles and sturgeon are on that list. So those are the other marine things that are included. But basking sharks aren't. They're protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act. So similar levels of protection, but not exactly the same for reasons that I can't find out, but I'm sure there will have been at some point. Just briefly for sea turtles, because no one else is covering them, but they are popping up a bit more at the moment. They are, again, they're completely protected. If you do happen to see one, there's only one species, the leatherback, that are genuinely happy in our waters. The others are generally juveniles that have been washed slightly further up. So whilst we don't want you disturbing them, if you do see them either caught in nets or washed up anywhere, if they're still alive, please do call British Divers Marine Life Rescue, because they will need lots of help in looking after and they really don't want to go back in the sea. So on to the main bits of legislation, how whale watching relates to English law. This is becoming more of my day job than I ever expected when I took it. But the specifics of legislation are relatively complicated, and it only ever gets tested if someone goes to court. But we have got those two key pieces of legislation that protect our cetaceans wherever they are in this country. The first is from the Habitats and Species Regulations, whether that's offshore, which is further than 12 nautical miles out, or whether it's inshore, which is anything from 12 nautical miles to the intertidal zone. And that has got two key things. You can't deliberately capture or injure or kill, and you can't deliberately disturb wild species that are on those lists. There has been a bit of discussion about what deliberate means, and it's actually more than you expect. So no one sets out, or very few people would set out to kill protected species, but deliberate means any conscious acceptance of consequences, i.e., if you're being can't think of a better way to phrase this. If you're being a bit of an idiot and you're not worried about the consequences, that could be seen as being deliberate. So it's not just that you have decided to go and injure them. So that's really clear. You can't do that. No one here is going to want to do that at all, I'm sure. But even people who don't take an interest are covered by that. For the habitats and species regulations, the disturbance is slightly different. So that bans any disturbance that could affect the population of those species. So that's anything that impairs survival, breeding, their migration, and local sort of abundance and distribution. So you're not, if you do a one-off disturbance that really upsets a humpback whale, that doesn't come under that particular bit of legislation. However, there is evidence that regular and repeated exposure to whale watching, for example, or boats in general, that then causes more longer term issues to the population. And that's where this legislation comes in. It's those repeated, ongoing. So if there are, say, we're talking about Iceland, 10 different whale watching boats going to see those humpback whales every day, that is what would be particularly managed under that piece of legislation. The second bit of legislation is the Wildlife and Countryside Act. So that's almost the same, intentionally killing or recklessly disturbing. And it's that reckless bit that's key there. That is any one-off encounter that causes disturbance can be prosecuted under that. So that's where your individual offences are much more likely to come. And there have been a handful of prosecutions under that particular legislation. There's one underway in Scotland at the moment for some repeated offences in Aberdeen, and those have all been under the Wildlife and Countryside Act. So how to avoid that is a bit of best practice for you about how you can make sure your activities are not causing any offences. So the first up is the responsible whale watching guidance. So this is the one that Sue mentioned, linked from the DEFRA information, and they've got some really great general details. It's designed to be worldwide. They've got a nice image to show you the best ways to approach from your boat. But really helpful if you're wanting to go and do whale watching abroad and you want to choose a responsible company. They've got some really good guidance, so have a look there. For those of you who are on the coast in this country, the WISE Cetacean Code of Conduct is where it's at. So just in case we haven't mentioned it enough times, if you've not done the course, do. It's brilliant. And they've got all of the key information you need for your big cetaceans. And really straightforward. So if you are out at sea and you spot them, make sure you maintain a steady speed and direction, and no more than 6 kilometers speed if you're within a kilometer of them. Absolutely never come any closer than that 100-meter. But if you've got more than one boat, make sure you're staying further away. And also limit the time you spend with them to 15 minutes. So it's not an ongoing encounter. Then make sure that you're not chasing them. Don't be driving any vehicles directly towards them or encircling them. So all hopefully for you keen wildlife watchers, fairly obvious on that front. Also, if they decide to bow ride, then maintain a steady speed and approach. It's actually just as bad to slow down suddenly as it would be to speed up. So the important thing is by being predictable for them. And allow them to remain together as a group. So if they're quite spread out, you have to be really careful about where you place yourself. If they've got any young with them, be especially careful. Those are quite vulnerable if they get separated from their mother. That's really difficult for them. Swimming, if you're tempted, it's maybe not the right time of year, and I don't think I'd be keen to swim with a humpback anyway. But please don't. It's not just for the humpbacks' sake, but also for yourselves, either swimming or even getting too close to them. Humpbacks are obviously huge animals, and it's really important that we don't have any incidents. Bex was saying earlier, Could you imagine if something happened and a humpback landed on a boat, the humpback would get the blame, and none of us want that. We know that wouldn't be their fault. So it's really important that you follow these guidance to look after yourself as much as looking after the animals. One way to help with that is making sure they always have an escape route. So don't get them to between them and the land or between seawalls, things like that. And finally, make sure you know when your time's up, your 15 minutes. Ensure you know where all the animals are when you move away so that you don't come too close to them at that stage. But also, we've talked about the signs of disturbance. If you see any signs of disturbance, it doesn't matter whether you've been there 1 minute or 10, then it's time for you to leave the area. And you can reduce your impacts by reducing the amount of noise you're making. If you've got a vessel, the slower you are, the less noisy that will be, and making sure it's well maintained can also help with that. Oh, that's me. And I think we're doing questions at the end, aren't we, Bex?
Thanks, Trudy. Yes, we are doing questions at the end. I'll meet again. All right. So thank you very much so far. So we'll hand over now to Dan from the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who is the Director of Welfare and Conservation for the charity, as well as our Regional Area Coordinator. And he will be telling you a bit more about our Southwest humpback whales. So photo ID and a little bit of their journeys and stories. So I'm just going to share my screen, Dan, so we can look at that one.
Okay, thanks, Bex. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's good.
All good. So good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see so many people joining us for the webinar today, especially some people who have contributed to the photo ID catalogue. I've seen a few of you in the chat and in the participant list as well, which is fantastic. As well as some faces and names from other parts of the country who I know as well. So lovely to see you all. As Bex says, I'm going to take you through some of the more specific things that we've been finding out about humpback whales that have been visiting us in the past few years around southwest England. So if we move on a slide straight off the bat there, Bex, we'll just learn a little bit more about them as a species, first of all. So their population worldwide is around 140,000, about 20,000 or so of which are in the North Atlantic. So it's, relatively speaking, a small population. Unfortunately, historical whaling decreased numbers of this and other large whale species quite considerably for a long period of time. But thankfully, it does seem that at least some of them, including the humpback whale, are starting to rebound and are increasing now. And that might be one of the reasons why we're starting to see more in the past 5 years around the UK and Ireland and other parts of the world as well. Humpback whales are born around 4 to 4.5 metres. Adults or adult males can get to up to 15 metres, and females slightly larger, up to 16 metres. And the calves are around 1 tonne or up to 1 tonne when they are born. Adults can get up to 35 tonnes, so they are pretty hefty creatures, of course, it goes without saying. And a little bit about their life cycle. Gestation of the calf before it's born takes around 11 to 11.5 months. So they're all born almost exactly 1 year after the mum gets pregnant. They give birth about every 2 to 3 years, though, in the winter breeding grounds. And they stay with their mum for approximately a year. And then at that point, they'll be weaned and independent, and they can start to leave and start looking after themselves. But it takes around another decade for them to become sexually mature, and then they'll enter the breeding population. And they can live for up to around 50 to 75 years. It's not exactly known still. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to oceanic species like this, but the life expectancy is currently believed to be around up to 75 years. But it could be more. We're not sure yet, because, as I say, so many were wiped out by whaling. We might have to wait a while to see if we find any much older animals in the future. Next slide, please, Bex. So looking at them as an individual, they're quite distinctive species. They can be confused with others sometimes because there are a few other big whales out there, like fin whales in particular, also sei whales, which we don't see quite so often around here, but there have been some recent sightings of them. But they can they have these really large distinctive pectoral fins. They can get up to 5 meters long. I mean, they're pretty unmistakable. There's no other cetacean species that has pectoral fins like them. They have the small dorsal fin, which can be quite variable in its shape. It can be hooked, it can be triangular, it can be almost a bump rather than a proper fin sort of shape. So there's a lot of variety in that. They have baleen plates, which are made of keratin. They're like hair or fingernails. They hang from the upper jaw, and they filter feed on all sorts of different prey from small fish through to plankton. And they can make a really, really wide variety of vocalizations. And in particular, you've probably heard about humpback whales singing, and they have these beautiful tunes that they sing down in the breeding grounds, which are produced only by the males to attract females with their song. And there's loads of amazing research going on into how these songs develop, how they're created, and how they evolve over time, and how they're used within populations. And that might be like a whole other talk we could do at some other point in the future. But they only really do the singing down in the breeding grounds. They don't do it anywhere else. So for other times of the year when they're outside of those regions, it will mostly be just for other forms of communication that they're using it for, but they won't be singing. They have all those lumpy, bumpy bits around their head and on the front of their pectoral fins as well. Again, quite distinctive to this species. Each of those little lumps contains a very sensitive hair, which can help pick up on vibrations around the animal. Might be used as an additional sense, sort of a form of communication as well. And you'll quite often also see parasites on them, like barnacles or possibly even whale lice as well. Next slide, please, Bex. They're really well distributed around the world. You can pretty much find them in all of the world's oceans. And they migrate, of course, something else that humpbacks are really, really well known for. They migrate every year from the subpolar feeding grounds in the summer to tropical winter breeding grounds. So winter, where we are right now, they mostly should be in their breeding grounds, but as of course we're finding some of them are hanging around here in Europe, in the UK and Ireland area. And some of these movements are also population specific as well. So if you look on that map just to the right, you can hopefully see in the North Atlantic that there are the winter breeding grounds down in the Caribbean and off the west coast of Africa. And then they migrate up past Europe or North America, up to sort of Greenland, Iceland, north of Norway, all up around there, up into the Arctic Circle. So that's where they move to and from throughout the year. So it's a massive migration, takes a lot of energy to do that. So they need to feed up a lot during that time they spend at the feeding grounds to help them last through the breeding season, because they don't feed very much during that time of the year. As I said, they've got a really varied diet of plankton and various small fish species. And the whales that are turning up here around Cornwall seem to be spending a lot of time actually feeding here as well. So we have seen quite a lot of that kind of behaviour going on. And there's a variety of techniques and behaviours that they use to feed. They can do skimming, which is basically just skimming along the surface, does what it says on the tin. They can lunge feed at the surface, where you see them more strongly come up and sort of break the surface of the water and sort of grab a mouthful of fish. They can do a behaviour called flicking the tail, bubble netting, which I'm sure you've probably seen videos of, where they create a wall of bubbles in a circle around a shoal of fish, which brings them up to the surface and traps them together as well. Lobtailing, again, splashing the tail, hitting them on the surface to stun prey. And also trapping, where they actually just sit at the surface with their mouth open, and fish sort of panicking at the surface actually end up jumping straight into their mouth, which is a bit unfortunate for them, but another very clever technique that they've got for feeding. They're good at diving, of course, like all cetaceans are. They're usually spending most of their time quite close to the surface, but have been known to dive down to around 400 meters and can hold their breath for up to 40 minutes, although in practice you'll see them sort of coming to the surface a few times in a row to take a few breaths. Then they'll go on a dive, but dives on average might only be about 10 to 20 minutes or so. Next slide, please, again there, Bex. Looking at some of the data that's been collected in recent years, there's a few charts here. If we look at the top left one first, this is just purely the data recorded by Cornwall Wildlife Trust and the Environmental Records Centre for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. It's got all of the baleen whale species recorded on there, but we can just look at the yellow line, as that's our humpback whales. So you can see from sort of 2019 onwards, that's when things started to pick up. And 2020 was an especially good year there as well. And it's pretty much continued on that track ever since, with mostly being quite significant numbers of sightings reported each year. If we just move over to the chart on the top right, this is the same kind of data, but it's from all data sources. So it's including the Isles of Scilly Bird Recorders Group, ORCA, Organisation Cetacean Survey data, Lundy Field Society, and other sightings networks, Sea-Watch Foundation, and so on in there as well. So lots more different data sets included in this one. So you can see actually for the past few years, since 2020, we've been getting maybe between 40 to 80 sightings reported in the southwest of England of humpback whales, which is really exciting. You know, it means that, you know, if you're in the right place at the right time and in the right season, which is right now, over the winter, December to February, March sort of time, hopefully if there's a humpback around, it will probably be seen repeatedly, as we'll get into in a moment with the photo identification. It's usually the same small number of animals that are staying here for a period of time and are repeatedly being seen, rather than it being 80 different humpback whales, which that's not the case. It'd be lovely if it was, but it's not the case. It's maybe 3 or 4 different whales that have been seen a lot of the time, and then a few others passing through that might only be here for a few days and then disappear again. And you can see a couple of maps at the bottom as well. On the left is 2021 and on the right is 2022. I really ought to update these actually. And you can see the purple dots are the humpback whale sightings from the CWT / ERCSIS data as well. So you can see that most of the sightings are maybe sort of from West Cornwall, some over at the Isles of Scilly as well. There's even one right up there in Plymouth Sound as well. So they're quite well distributed, but a lot of the sightings that we are getting are the north and the west of Cornwall, just around into Mounts Bay as well, and a good deal of them are actually coming from the Isles of Scilly. Next slide, please, Bex. Now, for the past few years, we've been running a humpback whale identification catalogue for the southwest region, which has been really, really exciting. Since they started turning up, we've been able to do this. And just a brief bit on how identification works. It's based on mostly body markings and scars. Sometimes it can be helped by dorsal fin shape as well. So you can see here a couple of examples. So on the right-hand side, the top and the bottom photos, they're the same animal, and the different coloured circles correspond to the same markings, which you can hopefully all see, and we're able to match animals that way. And then on the left there, you can use the markings on the flank of the animal and on its dorsal fin to do the same as well. So when it comes to humpbacks, people largely seem to think that it's only done on underside of the tail, on the flukes. That's not the case. You can do it on pretty much any part of the body, and there's one animal in the catalogue that can be actually identified from a marking on the inside of its mouth when it opens it up, which is quite amazing. So yeah, anything goes, and if anybody out there has got photos of humpbacks that they've never sent in, I really do urge you, we'll take them. They don't have to be recent ones, they can be from years and years ago, and we can still look back and match those and add them into the catalogue if they're new animals too. Next slide again, please, Bex. So when it comes to matching scientifically, oh, sorry, I'll need to click through for all the circles. Sorry, I forgot they come up individually. When it comes to matching, multiple marks are better rather than just doing it off one, because sometimes animals might have relatively similar markings, and if the photo is quite blurry, it might be a little bit indistinct, or if it's a bit too far away, it's not too clear. So it's really important we try to have as clear photos as we possibly can to confirm matches. What's really important is to not assume when you see a whale that it's the same one that was there yesterday. As we've found out through our ID work over the past few years, whales are really good at switching places. And also you might get a random one turn up for a day or so in the same place and then it's gone again. So we never assume that one whale we see from day to day is going to be the same one that was there previously or the next day, because it does change quite significantly. And scientifically, of course, you always want to be absolutely sure with the evidence to back up what you're saying is what we're actually recording. So keep clicking through, Bex. That's it. Couple more. And then, yeah, that's it. Next slide. There we go. So there's a couple of other whales just to show that point. These two whales in the photos on the right-hand side now, they were both seen on the same day in the Land's End area. One was around lunchtime, one was in the evening, but they're two completely different whales. Hopefully you can see from the markings on the top one, there's quite a lot of white scarring, and it's a triangular dorsal fin. The one at the bottom's got a really hooked fin, and although it's dark, there's actually really no markings at all on that animal when you brighten it up on the computer. So actually those animals were completely different, but same area, same day, could have easily been assumed to have been the same one without the evidence. Next slide again, Bex. I was just going to introduce you to a small number of the animals that are in our catalogue as well. There's just over 30 that are in there now, and this is number 1, called Pi. You might have seen the pictures already of this animal in the previous few slides, but if you can look on the bottom right photo, right underneath the dorsal fin, there is what appears to be the mathematical symbol for pi, which is where the name comes from. This animal was first identified sort of off Lamorna/Mounts Bay area in August of 2019. And has also been recorded by the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group in summer and autumn of 2020. Since 2020 and 2021, the winter, it's been seen almost every single winter at the Isles of Scilly, which is really exciting. So this animal is exhibiting site fidelity, and Pi has just been recently re-identified this year, just in the past 2 weeks, back at the Isles of Scilly again. So that's really exciting news that he or she is back again with us this year. In summer of 2022, Pi was also identified in the Western Isles in Scotland, so there's a connection there made by the Scottish Humpback ID and Lindsay McNeill. So we'll have to wait and see how long this goes on for and where else Pi might connect to in the future, if we can make more connections with other catalogues around the world. Next slide, please, Bex. The next one to show you is called Minstrel, number 25 in our catalogue, first identified in December 2023 in Newquay Bay, and was around right the way through until March, also seen in St Ives Bay and Mounts Bay. But what's really exciting about this animal is it's the first animal to be re-identified the following season in Cornwall. So Pi is the only one that has been seen repeatedly in the Isles of Scilly, but has never knowingly come back to Cornwall that we're aware of. And Minstrel's the first one on the Cornwall side that has come back. So in February and March 2025 this year, we were able to identify this animal on several occasions and match it back to photos from the previous year. So we'll have to wait and see if Minstrel comes back this year now. So that will be equally exciting if we do get re-sightings of that animal. Next slide again, Bex. Another one that was really exciting is this one here called Humpy. First seen in January of 2024 off the Isle of Man and reported to Manx Whale and Dolphin Watch. It was then seen a few weeks later, over the next few weeks then in Pembrokeshire in southwest Wales, and that was recorded a number of times by the Sea Trust. And then in February 2024, it was actually then photographed in St Ives Bay and then later Newquay Bay, down here in Cornwall. So this animal links the Isle of Man to Pembrokeshire and Cornwall, and that's our first known link between all of those locations too. And then one more slide, Bex. We have Surf Rider, who was the probably the famous whale that many of you might have heard of from earlier this year, back in January, right at the beginning of the year. It was first identified, and then over the next 6 weeks, it stayed pretty much exclusively in Newquay Bay, particularly close to the airport area, sort of up by Morganporth, and was seen pretty much every day, really, really well, quite close inshore. People from all over the country were coming down to see this animal. So it suddenly made humpbacks incredibly popular because this animal was so visible and readily able to be seen. And lots of people got the amazing opportunity to see this animal and start to learn more about them as well. So Surf Rider has been a great ambassador for his or her species. Next slide, please, Bex. So just a quick summary, what do we know? So sightings have increased significantly since 2020. A lot of the animals that are coming here appear to be feeding and using specific areas of the coast and habitats. We've got links to various areas of the west coast of the country. We don't really have many links at the moment to the east coast, but we have got humpbacks in our catalogue from Jersey and also from the Eastern English Channel more recently as well. We have 2 animals confirmed visiting the southwest UK area in different seasons or years, and most of them seem to be passing through. And we do wonder if many of these animals might be non-breeding juveniles that are not yet doing full migrations, but we need to do a lot more research before we can be sure of that. We also have some more international links. So some of the other whales in the catalogue have been matched to Cape Verde, to the Dominican Republic, and to islands north of Russia in the Arctic Circle as well, which were made through the Happy Whale website, which is fantastic. Next slide, please, Bex. So how can you help? Well, you can report your wildlife sightings. Cornwall Wildlife Trust and Erkis have an amazing sightings recording scheme where any wildlife species, including plants, trees and so on, they can all be recorded as well, either through the website or a brilliant app called Orcs, which is online recording Kerno and Scilly. You can also join the Sequest Southwest Volunteer Survey Scheme as well. So you can look on the Cornwall Wildlife Trust website to find out more about them. There's other ID projects for cetaceans as well. So there's the South Coast Bottlenose Dolphin Consortium. There's a Risso's Dolphin ID project, which has been really successful just in the past couple of years. There's, of course, ourselves with the Southwest Humpback Whale Catalogue. And also Dolphin Zone have recently started doing common dolphin identification as well. And, of course, with Sayer on the call, we should also mention seal photo identification as well. So if anyone wants to get seals identified, please do get in touch with the Seal Research Trust as well. But we're also looking at collaborative research with the local university at Exeter and coming up with a bit of a programme of different research projects to carry out and hopefully learn a lot more about our humpbacks, because we really do know very, very little about them. We don't know whether any of them are male or female, for instance. We don't really know what age group they fit into at the minute without speculating. And it would be really great if we could do more to protect and conserve them, and we can only do that by knowing more about them. So this is where your data, your sightings is really, really important. Next slide again. Last but one, nearly done. Sorry, I'm running over a little bit, I think. So last slide, we've already mentioned the codes of conduct here, so I won't dwell on those, but just to add again, if you have any dead animals, you can marine animals, you can report those to Cornwall Wildlife Trust Marine Strandings Network on the phone number there. And for live marine mammals and turtles that are in distress, team at British Divers Marine Life Rescue. We do also have a large whale disentanglement team as one of the key threats to humpback whales, particularly aside from disturbance, is entanglement in marine litter and also fishing gear as well. And we have had a couple of incidents in the past few years, unfortunately. So we do have a team available, specially trained with specialist equipment who can come out and deal with those as well. And then last slide, please, Bex. I'd just like to say a very big thank you to everybody who's contributed in some way, shape or form to the ID catalogue. We have lots of amazing citizen scientist contributors, Bex and the team at Cornwall Wildlife Trust, as well as the Sequest volunteers as well, who have managed to collect many of the sightings. Briar at the Isles of Scilly Wildlife Trust has been out data from there and passing it over to us, which has been hugely helpful. Bob Earl at Southwest Marine Ecosystems, who first fostered the idea of setting up a catalogue for this area. Lindsay at the Scottish Humpback ID, Fred Wenzel at the North Atlantic Humpback Whale Catalogue, Dr. Mithril McKay, who's been a really good advisor to us, and the Irish Whale and Dolphin Group, who have also got their own catalogue and have many sightings and animals in there as well. So thanks also as well to all of our speakers as well as today. I hope you've all found this really insightful and interesting, and I'll hand back to Bex and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Dan. Always love hearing the Humpback ID updates. Brilliant. We didn't have too many questions in the chat, and I think, I mean, so I don't know, Claire Lewis from one of our wardens at Loo Island just had a bit to add about with drone flying. Could we add to avoid birds where they're resting and feeding? Often this is in large numbers and they all get spooked, wasting energy and losing feeding opportunities. Yeah, so around our estuary, especially at this time of year, we do have a lot of birds migrating in and hanging out in estuaries and wetlands. So that's a really good point. Thanks, Claire. And Bryony had a question just about drones, which was just asking, do we make, you know, as the Cornwall Marine and Coastal Co Group, are we making any distinction on drone weight, like within the professional CA guidance? We're sort of maintaining at the moment a precautionary guide that we feel they should be kept away from wildlife at least 100 metres, simply because we don't really know enough yet about how much they cause disturbance, and it keeps the messaging simple and safe for the wildlife to make sure that it's not being disturbed, which is what I think we all want, really. So we're glad to hear any more information on that front from any drone operators. If they would like to let us know, you can always get in touch. That would be great to hear from you. But are there any other questions? Feel free to put your hand up, unmute, and ask them if you do have for any of our speakers. And guys, you must have done a really good job because we haven't got any questions. There's oh, go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so I haven't got a question, but I love a bit of serendipity. And yesterday, an artist donated some work to us for us to sell to raise some funds for the Seal Research Trust. You're not going to believe what 3 of them were. Oh, it's not going to do. It's right. I'll unblur my background. But gobsmackingly, they are. We've got 3 humpback whales, which is just incredible. And they're just like epic. Look at that. Can you see that? Isn't it fantastic? So I'm going to tell you, because I'm good at capitalizing on opportunities. This one's going on our shop tomorrow, and I've put the link in the chat for you if you want to buy it. Aren't they beautiful? They're by a guy called Nick, and they're just gorgeous. So yeah, I don't know, Dan, whether you can photo ID this one though, to be fair.
Well, what I will do, there's a lot of links in the chat, so I'll collate those into a little document. And I don't think speakers, are you happy to share your PowerPoints if I also put those in a folder? So what we'll be obviously keeping the recording of this and putting that onto YouTube so people can access it and rewatch, and other people who haven't managed to join today can watch it. And I'll make sure that those the PowerPoints and the links that we've put in the chat are also available to people that have attended. And obviously, yes, you can share the recording. Please do, if you want as many people to watch it as possible. We want all of you out there making sure that you get that messaging out. Go out on boats. Do ask if you're out on a boat trip. Do ask them if they follow the DEFRA code of conduct, and do they stay, you know, like 100 meters away, and make presence known, because I think that's the best way to keep that doing. And operators, we would love you to be just talking to people about the codes of conduct and why this happens, because then they'll go and spread that to other people also, and put pressure. You know, we're hoping everybody then will be raising their game, and that we do build this wonderful reputation for Cornwall as the best place to, you know, safely and ethically watch wildlife.
Beck, can I just chip in, because Bee's put another really good point in the chat about drones. And she does understand completely, which is great, that simple and safe messaging is much easier for the public to understand. But it's a bit like boats. Boats are not all the same. Kayaks and kayakers are not all the same. And it's just really far too complicated to, you know, we have electrical boats. Are we going to say that electrically powered boats that are much quieter are going to be allowed closer to species than others? It's just too complicated, really, to have different variations for different things. And ultimately, the other thing that we've noticed as well is about role modeling best practice. So if you've got a small drone, sometimes the people who are watching think, oh, well, that's okay, you can use a drone. They don't necessarily have the same drone, or a drone that's as quiet as a hairdryer like yours. They might have a noisy one, but they've seen the role modeling. So it's hugely complicated, and it's a minefield. So yes, I guess we would love to have every drone manufacturer drone, and this is how close you can get to these different species. So every drone, you've got 10 different things, and then we're going to do it for all the different types of boats. It's just not very easy to do. So I take your point entirely. It's just it is so complicated, and ultimately, if we're trying to put wildlife first, we're going to put wildlife first, and we're going to be precautionary.
And I might just add on that, Sue. It's not just the drones that are different. So you saw that Sue's picture of that huge drone. I was in Norfolk about 2 weeks ago with that huge drone doing a seal survey there. And we were testing out how close you can get. And you can get down at 80 meters and the seals don't even blink there. The conditions are completely different. The seals are completely different. We were close. Well, we weren't close enough because but there were people close enough that they could have stroked the seals. No one was. There are lots of wardens there, but those seals are much, much less easily disturbed than our Cornish ones. We can guess the reasons for that, but yeah, that's a whole nother thing that you might want to add in, but yeah, I haven't come up with a good way how to.
No, it depends on the individual seal as well. Some of them are shy and they can start a stampede. Some of the youngsters can start a stampede, you know, and it's the same for all animals. They're not all the same. They're all unique like us, and they will respond differently in different ways, which is why precautionary is so important.
Okay. Well, it looks as if I don't think we have any further questions. So thank you everyone for coming and supporting this. It's brilliant to see so many people here. And thank you very much again to our speakers today for your time and expertise. It was all very informative and useful. Like I said, we'll be making this available, so please do share far and wide. That would be great. All of you have a lovely Christmas break and a very happy new year. We'll be seeing you 2026, hopefully.